how much effect does trash talk have on the outcome of the game? Because yesterday, if you ask me, I think Demarcus Lawrence opened mouth and inserted foot about the Philadelphia Eagles. Oh, it is a football Friday, an undefeated football Friday, as a matter of fact, as the Mac guys, John McMullen and Jody McDonald, hang with you to talk about a very big football game coming up on Sunday night between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Dallas Cowboys. Usually that's enough said, but take a quick peek at the standing and see that the Eagles are the only undefeated team in the NFL. The Cowboys are one of very few teams at 4-1 so far, and the magnitude gets ratcheted up that much more. J-Mac is going to hang with me for the first hour. Jeff Kerr, who I just jumped into his show, is going to hop in and give Johnny Mac the chance to get over and hear from Nick Sirianni. I would love to have already heard from Nick Sirianni today, because it should be very interesting what Nick has to say. I know John McMullen and or his beat brothers on Eagles beat are going to ask him about it today. John, I did not know this was going to be a topic of conversation when I was getting ready, starting to think about the Friday Birds 365 after we wrapped up yesterday's. And I'm very interested to see. I think I know how you feel, because I know how I feel about the amount of effect trash talk, a.k.a. bulletin board material, has on the outcome of any given game. Yours truly believes that there's a whole bunch of people that put too much emphasis on it. Like, a guy's quotes are going to outweigh what actually happens on the field on Sunday.
No.
Don't believe that a little bit. No. But there are also some people that are dismissive that say it means nothing, that you can go ahead and say anything you want. It'll be decided purely by talent or whatever. I don't believe that either. So I don't get to either one of the polar opposite ends here. How much effect does trash talk have on the outcome of the game? Because yesterday, if you ask me, I think Demarcus Lawrence opened mouth and inserted foot about the Philadelphia Eagles.
I'm closer to the polar opposite of doesn't mean anything. I never go 100% all the time. One of Nick Sirianni's favorite phrases is a wise man avoids all extremes. Never 100%. It's always an individual. Look, if somebody can use it, and it can work both ways. You're saying Demarcus Lawrence. I watched Demarcus's interview. He was like sick of hearing about Jalen Hurts and kind of, went in that direction. And, they were asking him if he was scared of, and NFL players, that's one thing. I mean, they're not scared of anything. They're not scared of anybody. So they tend to get, their backup when people phrase things in that way. So, I mean, if an individual can take something, whether it's good or bad, whether it's Demarcus Lawrence taking that to have a good game, or Jalen Hurts taking that and saying it's disrespectful and he has a good game, I suppose it could work in an individual manner like that if somebody needs motivation. But usually good players are motivated. I mean, Jalen Hurts, it's the Dallas Cowboys, it's NFC East rival. He doesn't need anything. Demarcus Lawrence doesn't need anything. Demarcus Lawrence's biggest concern is Lane Johnson, not Jalen Hurts, because Lane has kind of dominated him over the years, or at least as much as any tackle has. That's his bigger concern. So while I'm not going to say 100% it's got no bearing, it's pretty high 90s. I'd say that.
Here's where I would think that you would at least give it some credence, because you're Mr. Human Nature.
That's why I said I did on an individual level.
Quarter, because when you're up by 3 touchdowns, it's human nature to get your foot off the accelerator a little bit. Well, I don't know about you, but I'd be human naturally pissed off if the guy minimized my quarterback and what he's accomplished so far this year. And I thought Lawrence did that yesterday.
As I said, and that's why I said on an individual basis, one player here, one player there might take it. I wish people could listen to A.J. Brown when they talk about this stuff, because A.J.'s like I don't care. I don't care. That's got nothing to do with me. Um, it yeah, I mean, these are high level athletes. I mean, they got to figure out a way to play every week. They got to figure out a way to play in Arizona. See, that to me is the bigger problem than Dallas. I mean, that's the so-called trap game. That's the perfect trap game. You have Dallas on the horizon. That's the human nature aspect of it. They don't need any help to get up for this game. They know what it means. But from a positive perspective, they also know what it doesn't mean. And it's still week 6 of the NFL season. It's not week 18. It's not for the NFC East title. So it's a big game. I think the Eagles are very good about putting everything in a perspective. And they've been very good about not falling into those traps, whether it's, Washington after the big Minnesota win or Arizona. They've been very good about it. No, I don't think it matters very much. And I know it doesn't matter very much to Jalen Hurts. He probably hasn't heard it, to be honest. And, but if somebody pulls out the clip and, and edits it correctly, same thing with Jason Peters calling the fans bleeping idiots. If you just edit out that piece
Right,
and don't put the context to it,
right?
The fans might get upset. But that has nothing to do with the Eagles either. So, I mean, Doug Peterson used to use certain things, but he used to use our stuff, media stuff. When I say our stuff, he used to use negative, um, pieces, columns, articles, and say, look what they're saying about you. He used to use it in that manner. I don't think Nick does that as much, but he does do it. Nick is very aware of the criticism of himself. I can tell you that. He heard all the Flower stuff and all that. So it depends on the individual, but the majority of the team doesn't, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to them.
I think you make a good point when you categorize the 2022 Eagles. They're not a team that rides on a lot of emotion. And it all starts, of course, at the quarterback position. And Jalen Hurts is a flatline guy. He doesn't get too high. He sure as hell doesn't get too low. He's got a great resting motion to him when he plays the game. So if your leader is going to be that way, I think most of the offensive guys will follow. And on the defensive side, BG plays with a little emotion out there on the field, but that's about it. Edwards and Kaiser White, I don't know if we know well enough. Certainly Fletcher, other than crawling on the ground after a sack, isn't a guy who plays with a whole hell of a lot of emotion. That's just not this Eagle team. They're not a team that's going to go highs and lows because of emotion. I think it's just, as you said, individuals. Individually, that's how they are. I don't know, as a collective, when you get all the individuals who are relatively similar, then you expect the collective to act the same. I don't know that this game is going to be decided on emotion at all on Sunday. Do you?
No. And, you bring up BG. I mean, BG is one of the biggest trash talkers in the history of the world. He does it on the field. So, guys who've been around for a while, they've heard, everything from Brandon Graham. Do they hold that against him? I don't think so. I think they're entertained by it more than anything else. Yeah, I mean, NFL players you don't get to that level, especially good NFL players. They are very, very competent. They are very, very confident in their abilities. So when someone questions their abilities, like how you're going to deal with Jalen Hurts, which is kind of the way it was framed with Demarcus Lawrence, you tend to get a little pushback. They tend to get, what are you talking about? I'm Demarcus Lawrence, that type of thing. So I don't think it's going to have a large bearing. I think Lane Johnson's handling of Demarcus Lawrence is going to have a much larger impact on this game.
As do I, because Lane is having an unbelievable season so far this year. But maybe I'm looking at it as a guy who's going to have a rooting interest, who's going to be rooting for the Eagles on Sunday. From a fan's perspective, yeah, it annoys me because the Eagles are the only 5-0 team in the National Football League. I don't think they're a full 5-0 team either. It isn't like they've had games handed to them or gifted to them and the other teams messing up, and the Eagles really you and I both have thoughts about a couple teams that are 4-1 in the National Football League as of right now, Vikings, Giants, that we don't really think of as dominant teams or very good teams, even though the record says they are at 4-1. Their schedule that they've played, the way that the games have gone, double doinks in games, there are explanations for it. There's no writing off the Eagles 5-0. They've earned their 5-0, and they're a legit 5-0. And when Demarcus Lawrence says the things that he says, and he says them the way that he says them, yeah, as a guy who does Birds 365, it kind of ticks me off, Johnny Mac.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it from this perspective. There's no you talked about the Giants, and I agree with you. Obviously, I've had to back off a little bit and stop saying they stink. I agree with you on Minnesota. They've gotten lucky. On the other hand, you could say the same thing about Dallas, and especially from a defensive perspective. There's no shaky 4-1 for Dallas. It's the exact opposite. It's astonishing they are 4-1 because of playing with a backup quarterback. And oh, by the way, a lightly regarded backup quarterback. This is not considered to be one of the better backup quarterbacks in the NFL. In fact, Jerry Jones got a ton of criticism because for the first 4 years of his career, Dak Prescott was a workhorse, never missed a game. And then all of a sudden the injuries started to follow up, and here they come. Another injury, he's had 3 injuries over the past few seasons. And he's done nothing at the backup quarterback position. And he's gotten a lot of criticism for that. This defense has won, they just dominated the Super Bowl champions, who are not playing well, but it's on the road. Sean McVay, obviously, considered the guy when it comes to offensive football. Their numbers are off the charts defensively. Third in points per game, 6th in the advanced stats, the defensive, if you're a Football Outsiders guy, the DVOA, all that kind of nonsense. So traditional numbers, they're good. Advanced numbers, they're good. And obviously, Demarcus Lawrence is a big part of that. So I would say, while you can't disparage the Eagles at 5-0, which I agree with, you can't disparage the Cowboys 4-1. They're not the Giants. They're not the Vikings. It's kind of amazing they're 4-1. And you start to look at it, if Dak Prescott gets healthy, if he starts playing like Dak Prescott, well, this is probably one of the 2 or 3 legitimate contenders in the NFC. So I think it works both ways.
And oh, by the way, if there are Cowboy fans, and one of them could be the owner, he's kind of a fan of his own team, want to bend over backwards to take a ton of credit for Cooper Rush being as good as he is, I'll throw the BS flag here, right now.
Throw it.
He's been on their team for 5 years. They cut him, and the Giants, of all teams, picked him up, had him on their roster for a couple of weeks, had to turn around and cut him because they got in a roster crunch. There's the one place I give the Cowboys credit. When Cooper Rush became available again, they did make a play to get him right back into their organization.
Jody, he's got 14 transactions in his career already. And I think he came in 2017. Yeah. And by the way, he hasn't even played that well. That's another thing where you put another feather in the cap of the Dallas defense. What he's done well is he hasn't turned the football over. He's managed the game well. But it's not like he's making explosive plays. It's not like he's making great throws. He's just not making mistakes. And they're playing with that smaller margin of error, and they've been able to win games. I think Pro Football Focus has him 25 of 36. So it's not like he's playing great football. He's playing better than people expected. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, he doesn't deserve credit for Cooper Rush.
Right. I would be slow in giving the Cowboys credit for it, but Demarcus Lawrence, if someone on the Eagle defensive line wanted to go down the road of Cooper Rush, who has he played so far? Well, he actually did play Aaron Donald in the Rams last week, so just a foolish stance by Demarcus Lawrence, and yeah, it did tick me off a little bit. I'm with you. I think in reading what your thoughts are on how much effect bulletin board material can give a team, I give it a little more credence than you do. Neither one of us give it a ton, but I give it a little bit more credence, and I hope I'm right, because I hope it ticked a couple of guys on that Eagle offensive line off. Not that they need it, but if they can add a little extra motivation because of it, we should take it from an Eagle perspective. I.e. John McMullen, I'm Jody McDonald. Here's the way it's going to lay out today. JM and I are going to hang around for hour number 1, and then John's going to go in and see if Nick Sirianni says anything on or off the record prior to the Sunday match.
He's not going to say anything on the record. I can tell you that.
Yeah, you probably will pick and choose his words carefully on the record.
He's not going to Demarcus Lawrence the Cowboys. I'll tell you
probably. Sirianni's pretty good and pretty smart when it comes to that stuff. And then hour number 2, Jeff Kerr's going to jump in with me. I jumped in with him. And, oh, by the way, just for the record, I agreed to go on Jeff's show before Jeff agreed to come and fill in for Johnny Mack. I didn't know John.
Yeah, I gotta thank you. Friday kind of snuck up on me this week. That Nick Sirianni always does an off the record on Friday. And it's, it's important if you want to know what's going on with the team, which is pretty big part of what we do here. So I think it's pretty important, but Phoenix and all that stuff, it snuck up. It's a quick week. This was a quick week. Snuck up on me.
And I didn't know who was going to be sitting in for you in hour number 2 until well after I stopped watching sports last night. I didn't even check my phone. I don't know what time. I know a time, but I didn't know it came in until this morning. When I got
by the way, Jody, we got to talk about that game last night. I was thinking I could not turn that game off because of the incompetence. It was like a car crash. You can't turn away. I could not turn away because of the Chicago incompetence. And I have an Eagles tint to that because I think it shows you how good the Eagles are. What they are doing to Justin Fields is, the offensive coordinator is a joke. Luke Getsy. He's another Aaron Rodgers guy. But all these guys should pay residuals to Aaron Rodgers.
Nathaniel Hackett, are you telling me that's why they have the jobs that they have?
What they're doing to that kid, and this is what I talked about in the offseason. I know we got to hit a break. We can talk about it afterward. But I said, the Eagles would be doing a disservice to Jalen Hurts if they just tried to make him a pocket. We talked about it all offseason. And I said, this is a Jalen Hurts first team. I came to that conclusion. You got to build around what this kid does well. And to Nick Sirianni's credit, he has done exactly that. And Shane Steichen's credit. And they're doing the exact opposite in Chicago. And Matt Eberflus and Luke Getsy, they should be ashamed of themselves. That was embarrassing.
I'll go you one further, and I'm sorry that an ex-Eagle executive will be dragged into this conversation, and the general manager, because this past offseason, they had made an aggressive move to get Fields, so they gave up their first-round draft pick. Then with their first 2 picks of the draft this year, they take defensive players. They go out and trade their best defensive player for more draft assets down the road, but that's not going to help Jalen Hurts right now. They added 0 weapons to that team during the offseason. The Eagles had a better offense, and they added A.J. Brown. They were starting from a better position than the Bears were, and they went out and got one of the best wide receivers in the league. What did the Bears do for Justin Fields?
Yeah. Well, the personnel stinks. I mean that is on. You're absolutely correct. But that doesn't bail out the coaching staff. Personnel season's over. I'm with you. They got one of the worst rosters in the NFL. But that's over. That doesn't mean you have to stop, trying to maximize what you have. And they're not maximizing what they have in Justin Fields. You're still going to be bad. Don't get me wrong. But if you play the correct way and build, all you have to do is watch the Eagles, use them as a +1 in the running game, like the Eagles used with Jalen Hurts. Very similar type setup. He's better. Are they going to win a lot of games? No, because the personnel stinks. But it's not going to be that ugly. He's not going to look that bad. He's not going to look that. And by the way, you saw the one throw where he missed to the tight end in the end zone, which was just a terrible throw, wide open. He's losing confidence on top of it because it's exactly what you don't want coaches to do. Exactly what you don't want coaches.
But I will say this, and you know how big a Justin Fields fan I am. I just flat out loved him coming out of college and thought he should have been the number 2 pick in the draft. And I was hoping the Jets took him because they had the 2nd pick rather than Wilson. There were plays last night where he had time in the pocket, had a guy with some separation in the pattern, and he's not just zipping the football. You can tell he can. Every once in a while, he just lets one go, and you go, wow, that's serious arm talent. That's the ability to just cock it and let it rip. But a whole bunch of throws last night, it seemed to me like he was guiding them. He was more worried about touch and catchability. You can't do that in the NFL anymore, John. They're too big. No. They're too fast. DBs react quicker. You can't worry about putting the perfect touch on the ball. You got to get it there. And I know Fields has the arm to do it. I've seen it. I saw it at Ohio State. I saw it on a couple of passes last night. But I also saw a couple of passes where he's just like trying to lay it out there and throw the perfect pass. That's not going to work in the National Football League.
No, it's not, but that's kind of what I'm talking about. When you use a player incorrectly, he starts to lose confidence.
Might be. He might be in his own head. You could be right.
And that's one of the issues, which you can't prove it. It's not tangible. So I know people are saying, oh, he's wide open. That's why I used that example. Yeah, that's a throw you have to make as an NFL quarterback. There are a bunch of them. He's clearly not playing with confidence. Clearly. But I think a lot of that has to do with the way he's being used and utilized and asked to do. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy when you coach poorly. They have a certain style of quarterback, and they are trying to fit him into Luke Getzey's scheme, which is the Aaron Rodgers scheme. Well, he can't do what Aaron Rodgers can do, but there are things he can do that Aaron Rodgers can't do, believe it or not. And they need to take advantage of that, and they don't. And that's why I blame the offensive coordinator. Now, Matt's a defensive head coach, which is another mistake, probably. If you have a young quarterback, you probably should have went offensive head coach. But you know how this league works, Jody. They had Matt Nagy, offensive guy. Pendulum swings, they go defensive guy. That happens all the time. They're wasting the kid. And by the way, I don't think you see him doing his yoga breathing exercises in Chicago. I don't think he's a Chicago. It's not going to work. But they ramped up the failure quickly with their decision. And that coaching staff is an abomination.
And oh, by the way, the new general manager hired the coaching staff. He hired the head coach. He hired the defensive coordinator. He didn't pick the quarterback. So if and when they make a change, chances are it's going to be a quarterback before it is an head coach.
And in my opinion, Jody, you can take the if off of that when they change, because it's over for Justin Fields. Hopefully he'll get a second opportunity. He's got enough talent. Somebody will take a chance, and hopefully he gets in an organization that understands, all right, we have to use him in a certain way when in Chicago. The clock is already ticking.
Be interesting to see how it plays out, because the teams that need a quarterback are going to try and take a quarterback in the draft. It's going to have to be that perfect fit of a team that still needs a quarterback, but the best quarterbacks are off the board. So let's see if we can trade for Justin Fields. Yeah, the kid is all of 21 games into his NFL career, and he's already on shaky ground as to where his career is going to go. That's just flat out wrong. All right, Mac, guys. We got off on a Justin Fields / Chicago Bears talent. Shame on us.
But
Eagles,
I compared
Cowboys
it to the Eagles. I compared it because I think it shows you the really good job that Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen, Brian Johnson, Kevin Patullo, all the offensive coaches are doing with Jalen Hurts. And by the way, they listened to Howie Roseman, Jeffrey Lurie. They have to, obviously. And they played the game in the offseason. And this is what I was talking about the entire preseason. And when that blip switched, because I was concerned they were going to try to make Jalen Hurts into something he isn't. And to their credit, they said, we're going to go win games now. Thanks, guys.
Right, but Howie Roseman also was the guy who drafted Devontae Smith #1 last year and added A.J. Brown this year, which made them a better offense. I'm not trying to take any credit away from the offensive coaching staff. Howie Roseman gave him the bullets.
Well,
play
you
it
know
the way
how
it
I
needed
feel
to be played.
about A.J. Brown. I mean, A.J. Brown is, he was the piece that set everything into place on the offensive side of the football. So I'm not downplaying the addition of A.J. Brown. But if they were using Jalen Hurts as a, Aaron Rodgers style offense, they wouldn't be 5-0. They'd be better than the Bears probably, but they wouldn't be 5-0.
Correct. All right, he's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. J-Mac going to stay for hour #1. Jeff Curry's going to come back for hour #2, filming for Johnny Mac. And John Machota, who we've had on the show previously, does a great job covering the Cowboys for The Athletic down in Dallas. He's going to jump aboard with us in hour #2. Come back. I do want to talk about these two defenses because we all want to see a great game. Well, I shouldn't say that. There are some Eagle fans that would like to see the Eagles win 73-0. I don't think that's happening. I think it's going to be a good competitive game on Sunday. And the reason I do is because I think both of these are very good defenses. I do want to compare and contrast Eagles defense, Cowboys defense, and how they're going to attack them. Mac coming back here on Birds 365 next.